welcome back to another episode of Can't Take Your Call Right Now with me, Lauren Reeves.
And me, Harry Monkhouse.
And it is episode 7 of series 2, where we're talking all about how to get into tech, BDR roles. And so it made sense to get two people who have created quite an incredible community in the tech space. We've got Joana and Roxanne here with us both from TechTalks, and we're so excited to have you. I know both me and Harry have been buzzing to chat to you both. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys. Would you like to give us an intro to yourselves?
Yeah, let me go first. So I'm Joana. I'm one of the co-founders of TechTalk and Reslink. And basically, I'm originally from Brazil. I moved here about 9 to 10 years ago. And since I moved here, my career was a little bit all over the place. I came in as an international, so I needed to get visa sponsorship, which added another layer of complications into it. But then from there, basically started my career in customer support and then quickly pivoted into marketing. And I built my career in marketing for the last couple of years. So in the last 5 years, I've been in marketing. I managed to grow very quickly in my career from intern to director in under 5 years, which was great. And I loved my career there. But then we started TechTalk at the same time that was at my previous company. And then from there, basically we grew so quickly, so much, and it was amazing. Like we loved what we were doing, and we decided to quit our full-time jobs about 6-7 months ago to do it full-time. And yeah, that's more or less it.
Yeah, and I'm Roxanne. I'm the other half, or the other co-founder of TechTalk Wrestling. I'm half French, half from Cameroon, but grew up most of my life in Cape Town, South Africa. So I moved to the UK around 10 years ago for, better career opportunities. I actually came here to study, and that's where I met Joana. So Joana and I have known each other for quite a while, actually. We met at university in Mandarin class, where we were both like, what?
No way.
No idea what this was.
It's a crazy story. I never knew that.
Yeah. So we met in Mandarin class at university. We actually lived in China together as well for 6 months. So fair to say that, we spent most of our adulthood or adulting part of life together, which has been fun. And yeah, ever since leaving university, I've been working in the tech industry. So I actually started in tech sales as a sales development representative in a fintech company. I think it's probably the best way to start your career, by the way, is being a sales development representative.
Could agree.
No bias. But yeah, honestly, I think it was such a great way to start your career, especially even thinking, as being a founder now. I think a lot of the characteristics and skill sets that I kind of gained by being an SDR really has helped me now when building TechTalk. But yeah, so I was an SDR for about 1.5 years at a fintech startup. And then I moved into a big tech company, HubSpot, where I was working on their go-to-market strategy team. And then after HubSpot, I was working for a payments company, B2B payments company, where I was leading their revenue operations team. And when I was working at that payments company is also when we had TechTalk on the side. So fair to say I've had a few career pivots, always on the go-to-market commercial side of the business. But yeah, I've had a few career pivots, both in terms of role, but also in terms of company size, going from startup to big tech to scale up, where you kind of have to position yourself and your skill set a little bit differently each time.
Nice.
Very cool. By the way, that's a way cooler story of how you guys met versus me and Lauren. Me and Lauren is we're in a WhatsApp group about BDR stuff, and then you guys are doing Mandarin at uni and then living in China together. That's way cooler.
We're so boring, Harry.
Yeah, I know.
I love that. So where did the idea of TechTalk come from? Who sort of threw it out there first? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an observation, honestly, that we both had. Joanna and I, considering we've been in adulthood together, have always, talked about our careers a lot. I think that's something that, we're obviously very studious at university, but even, before building TechTalk, that's just a topic of conversation that we had a lot of the times in terms of career progression, in terms of conversations to have in your careers with your managers, things like this. And something that we noticed is that whenever we were speaking with people, especially people that obviously didn't work in the tech industry, the next question that would come about is, oh, nice, so you work in tech, so what kind of coding language do you work with? So there was always this question around coding, and it was a bit weird because it's just English? That's the language that we use? I don't understand this question. So yeah, there was clearly a pattern that showed that people had this thought that you had to code in order to work in tech. Despite the fact that, tech is like a very booming industry, a lot of people want to work in tech. It's clearly only on an upwards trajectory. And yet people didn't realize that you don't have to have any sort of like technical skill sets to be able to work in tech. So that was actually the original aim of TechTalk, was to teach people about the non-coding side of tech. Both Joanna and I have always built our careers on the non-coding side of tech. So that was kind of the original aim, to kind of lay out like the different departments that exist, the role titles to go after. And if you're like career pivoting, or if you're starting your career, like what it is, what is your original entry point that you can go for. And then with that also, like, what are the kind of assets that you need in terms of building your CV, LinkedIn, networking, all of that. But yeah, as we grew, we also had software engineers starting reaching out to us as well. So we kind of pivoted from just being focused on non-coding to both non-coding and coding. So essentially, if you want to build a fulfilling career in tech, you can come to us and we can help you with that.
Really cool. I mean, this is why we've done this series of the podcast, is because both Lauren and I are inundated with people asking, like, right, I need help breaking into tech. There's a lot of people that are pivoting. Again, we spoke about it on earlier in the series. We're convinced that, like, because of TikTok and stuff like that, tech is just, I don't know, seems like more people are talking about it than ever before. I don't know whether that's just because our feeds are everything around like getting into tech, but I feel like there's so many more people that I speak to or even interview that are transitioning from, like, I've got an ex-basketball coach and like who's transitioned into tech. I've got an engineer in my team. I've got teachers. Like, it feels like a lot more people are aware of the role now than when me and Lauren joined like 7 years ago. And it is really, really daunting going into that solo. So having a community like yours, being able to lean on people, and also people that know how to kind of break into tech, is hugely, hugely valuable as part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, one thing I love is that you've both got different aspects of your careers in tech, right? Obviously, you said there, Roxy, you were like on the sales side, you went down the marketing. How have both of those sort of helped you grow the community to where it is today? And sort of, what do you think you both have added in your own way to that as well?
Yeah, I think we complement each other very well. I think because we went in different directions in our career as well, even though we were like both on the commercial side, we're not technical, so we can't develop anything. But we have like different perspective of things. So for me, it's much more like on the marketing and sales side, because even though I was in marketing, I used to manage BDRs. So I was managing our sales team in the last couple of years too. So always for like marketing, sales, like I'm very marketing and sales driven. So everything on figuring out like how we're gonna like go on social media, because we grew initially on social media. That's how kind of TechTalk started existing, was social media, and we kind of started that way, and then we built the business from there. But I think that's more or less like the part that I brought, and Rox is much more like on the operational and strategy. She's very good at that. I would say like I'm better execution. Rox is very good at like strategy and kind of linking everything together and kind of operationalizing everything that we build. So I think because we complement each other very well, it worked. Because I feel like if you have the same ideas and you have like the same view on everything, it's very hard for your business to grow as much, because you're not going to be challenging each other's decisions. So yeah.
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 100%. Nothing
I was trying to think there, what's mine and Lauren's is like yin and yang first as part of that. We always talk about how similar we are.
We'll cover that later. We'll figure out the yin and yang another time.
Yeah, I would say on that, like, I definitely think, I mean, Joanna, our story of how we met was my sister and girlfriend worked with Joanna, and I ended up as an AE selling to Joanna. Whether it was a successful endeavor of the sale or not is a very different story, but that's how we met kind of like 4 years ago. And I would say, like, when we were working together as part of like setting up the project of one of the marketing bits of kit, you were so detail orientated, and like the execution of stuff. Like, I think I always said to you, like, you were the best person to work with from a setup perspective out of any of the customers that I ended up selling to, because of that execution. So yeah, super interesting that you say that.
So thank you. Yeah, I even forgot that you sell me something. I was like,
Harry is
yeah,
very forgettable, to be fair.
yeah,
So
very convincing.
Had to convince someone.
yeah. So before I ask you loads of selfish questions about how you manage your time and you grow and all that stuff, let's first dig into how does someone actually break into tech? So what are the things that you see? What's the advice you initially give? Would love to really start diving into that.
Yeah. I think the first thing to really think about, even before going into like the very actionable tips of building your CV, LinkedIn, all of that, is actually to have a very clear idea of the role you're going after. Because honestly, like in order to build your CV, LinkedIn, networking, like all of the more like practical things that you see, on Instagram or that we talk about, like you have to fit all of that actions towards one role, because otherwise you're kind of going for a lot of things and you're spreading yourself way too thin. Because essentially, like whether you're career pivoting or whether you already have a career in tech. So, for example, even though I already had a career in tech, I was still changing roles. You need to make sure that your narrative is very, very clear as to what are the transferable skills or knowledge that you have from your past experience, which makes you a good fit for this next position. So, even when Harry was saying that he has, basketball coach, he's got teachers, he's got engineers, like they can all get into different roles in tech, but you have to be very clear on like what are the expectations of that role. You need to show that you understand what that role entails, and then you need to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together as to how your past experience shows that you'll be able to do that role first. So I think it's a bit of a boring answer, but the first part is really just research. So making sure that you again know what kind of roles exist, and then you pinpoint ideally one, maximum two roles that you're going to then build like the entire rest of your assets towards. And then, I think for some people, because they already have awareness and they know what it is that they want, it'll be a lot quicker. For some people, they just know they want to work in tech, but they don't know what kind of role. So it might take a bit long, and that looks a little bit different for everyone. But the first thing is definitely knowing what kind of role you want to go for. And then it's about building your CV, LinkedIn, very targeted to that role. But knowing the role is definitely the first thing you need to do.
And with that, again, it's super hard, I think, with pivoting into tech around you don't know what you don't know. So there's a lot of times like, am I going to be good at sales? Like, is it marketing that I want to go into? Is it ops? Is there anything that from that, what you were just saying there, is there any kind of like skills within your current role? So whether you are a basketball coach, a teacher or something that you're getting people to think about looking at that go, hey, they're really clear, like transferable skills, or things that you might want to be going and trying first before you're like, I know that I'm a bit more creative and I've done a bit of design work on the side. Marketing might be something that I want to go into. Or me, I love talking. So I was like, sales feels like the right fit, right? But is there any kind of like exercises or way that you get people to transfer skills over to fit to certain roles?
Yeah, definitely auditing your skills first would be the first thing. So even before even thinking about what role titles should I be going for, I would say basically write as many skills or like as many things that you've done, and tick like the things that you enjoy doing and the things that you don't enjoy doing. And then out of the things that you enjoy doing, like what are some of the things that you want to basically keep doing as part of your career? So you kind of want to, again, without even thinking about the role title first, but think like, what are my core skills that I have? So for example, you just said, Harry, speaking was one of your core skills. So clearly communication, probably like driving influence, like all of these kind of go towards communication. So first thinking about what are your core skills that you want to continue building as part of your career. And then starting to look at, okay, what are some of the roles where these skills are really important? And yeah, basically doing that. I think also one of the key things, because it is easy to kind of look at job descriptions, right? And then they're just going to always say that these key skills are needed. I would say start having conversations. Essentially, once you maybe found a list of, let's say, 10 roles where you realize, okay, communication is very, very important. It's clearly like one of the core skills that is needed. Then starting to basically network and speak with people where you're communicating a lot as part of that core skill within the tech industry is important. But yeah, I would say the first thing is kind of auditing your own skill sets so that you kind of eliminate the things that you don't want to keep doing and you realize what your strengths are. Because again, also in order to career pivot, you need to know where your strengths lie, and you'd be surprised by the amount of people that think that they have no strengths. And I'm like,
yeah,
yes, then you have.
Yeah, I've always recommended Grace Beverley's book of Is It Working Hard, Hardly Working? Because she talks a lot about like micro passions within certain activities. And I've always taken that forward around like, am I going to enjoy certain things? So even when I was transitioning for, like you're saying, different roles, management or AE, BDR management, or trying to go into doing some consultancy stuff, I would try and think about what are the things that I am passionate about within even just day to day. Like I like doing Sudoku puzzles. Again, I'm not maybe someone that sits on the train doing them, but I do enjoy solving certain pieces. Is even that from that point of view a transferable skill to any of those roles? So I think I think that audit exercise is probably overlooked. Like it's not I wouldn't say it's common advice that I hear a lot of people give. Like, are you thinking about changing job roles? Well, first of all, start with an audit. Is just, hey, just start applying to stuff and see what you like. So I like that kind of like pause exercise that you suggested there.
Yeah, it's a lot about like finding that intersection, right? Between like what is it that you're good at and what you want to do. Because I feel like there's some people that are like, oh, I'm really good at this, but I'm like, would you enjoy like being like talking to people every day and like getting the phone and everything like that? And they're like, no. So I'm like, okay, so maybe you wouldn't like doing that job. So I think it's also about like finding that intersection. And something that Rox also mentioned that I think is really important, even when you're like exploring this, is like the networking piece of if you have like 4 or 5 roles that you're in between and you're not sure like which ones you want to go after, like talk to a lot of people that are working in those roles, because they're going to tell you much more about how is it actually working there in like the day to day than you're going to be able to find like on Google, because every company is also different. So I think also understanding from like industry perspective and transferable skills in the sense of industry too. Because for example, like if you look at teachers or if you look at nurses or anything like that, it's like, okay, they worked in healthcare for a really long time. Like they understand that market like inside out. If you work for a company that is selling to these people, you have like a leverage that no one else does. So it's also about like understanding what is that industry knowledge that you have that you can take on. And even like for sales, that's really important, because it's about understanding your persona, understand who you're selling to.
Yeah.
If you have that knowledge, it already like differentiates you a lot.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So that networking piece, because I think that can feel really, really quite daunting for someone that is like has never reached out to people. You've got some people, even in tech, right? You might not be a fully extroverted person that just loves messaging people and calling people out of the blue. How does one get started with like networking? Where would you start?
Like with anything, doing it.
There we go. That's it. The advice is done.
Yeah, I mean, there's no like secret of networking. I think it's like just that barrier of you becoming comfortable doing it, which is like the hard thing to cross. But the only way for you to cross it is for you to start doing it. Like it's the same thing as if I think on when we started posting on Instagram. It's like I hated recording myself. I hated putting myself like out there. I was a very introverted person. But if I wanted like the business to work, I had to do it. So I started doing it, and at some point it just became really comfortable that I didn't care anymore about like, because usually we care about what other people are thinking. It's like, like we're being annoying, or if they're like going to be judging us or anything like that. It's more like that mental block. But I would say like start easy. Like you can start reaching out to people like in your network first, and then you can like expanding to people that are not in your network. But I would just say like aim and have a goal of like reaching out to like 5 people maybe like in a week, and with the goal not to like get something out of it necessarily, but just like to build a connection and build a conversation. Because that's, I think, the biggest problem we see with networking is that people go in wanting something without giving something in return. So they're like, okay, I'm going to reach out to this person because I want this, and it's like, well, network is an exchange. Like you need to give something and then you take something. So I think it's also that mindset of like you need to build your network for your future and not just for like to get a job now. That's like a mindset that people have a lot of trouble with.
Yeah.
Do you think that I was going to say, do you think that it's just LinkedIn as a platform like that? Again, you've got communities like yours, but if someone's getting started, do you think it's LinkedIn where you start, and then are you adding a note to your connection and then trying to just go from there?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is the easiest place to start, because again, like you're not in person. Like if you talk about in-person networking, is like 10 times harder because that barrier just becomes really big. So I would say like start online, because I think that's easiest. Just like send a connection request with a note, like start having some conversations, see what interesting things that these people have done. Maybe they got a promotion, maybe they have like achieved something that you're looking to achieve, maybe they did a course that you're looking to do, and just start trying to have conversations from there. And then you can start going to like in-person events. Like communities is also very important, because it's kind of like that safe space. So like joining community so you can network with people going through the same thing that you are going through as well. And then in-person events can kind of be the last one. But usually with in-person events, like I always say, you need to be very targeted when you go. And I usually prefer going to smaller events than bigger events. I don't think like for networking, going to big events is really helpful because you don't know who's there. There's a lot of people, you get confused. So I think like small networking events, like part of communities too, are the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree.
I was just going to say that I think that so much of this is just like the mindset game. Like, oh, like people don't want to talk to me. People don't care what I have to say. And I think that actually what I found is that almost every single time someone says yes, or they're happy to learn about you, or they're happy to answer your question. I think that whenever someone messages me on LinkedIn, like I tend to always reply whenever they're asking me, like, just like, oh, hey, I'm just really curious, like, how did you do this? Or like, I will always reply. I've got no issue replying. So I think try not to let fear play a big part in this. Like I can absolutely see how that holds people back. And if sales is the career that you are hoping to get into in tech, showing that you haven't got that fear is only going to benefit you anyway, because then it adds. I mean, we've spoken loads about, you know, prospecting the companies that you want to work for to like get in front of the hiring manager and what else. And all of that is showing that you've already got the skills needed to be a good salesperson before even getting a sales job. So yeah, definitely agree. Like try not to let like fear and your mindset get in the way of doing the networking and reaching out as well. 100%.
Yeah, people are very willing to share their time. As you said, like if they can see that somebody's hungry, as long as they feel like they can help. So as long as you're reaching out again to somebody where their knowledge is related to what it is that you're looking to do next, then people are very, very willing to help. Like people love to see people that are just trying to figure out their career. I mean, they've probably been through that same point in time where they were also lost and like they also needed to speak with people to figure out like what it is that they should be focusing their time on. And so, I mean, same as you, Lauren, like I found that people are actually very, very receptive to wanting to help out whenever they just see that there's somebody who's just trying to figure it out and they're being proactive about it.
Because a lot of people don't ask.
Yeah.
It comes back to our point, Lauren, of like cold calling the hiring manager. We were discussing, I had my last job role that I had available, I had 250 people apply. I had 2 people call me. So percentages are so low that you're happy to take the time to speak to people because it doesn't happen very often. Now, if we were in a world where I'm getting messaged 100 times a day for, hey, I'm trying to break into tech, then again, we have to then prioritize that. So it'll be, can you stand out? But not enough people actually message you anyway for asking for help, which means that, it's very easily done. And people are willing to say yes because it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah. I think on that point, like, what would you say are the most common mistakes that you see people make at this stage? Like for all sort of tech careers, not just sales, but what do you see sort of crop up time and time again? And you're like, why are you doing that?
Yeah, I think when sending messages is definitely if they don't personalize it to that individual. So if they're sending like a message where, okay, you kind of just change the first name, but I could literally send that message to 6 other people and I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I think that's probably one of the biggest, ones where it's just like, okay, but you're not making it very clear why this person is the person that you're reaching out to. So I think definitely not personalizing your message is probably the biggest one, to be honest, especially when it's something like LinkedIn, because LinkedIn, it's a database. You have so much information on LinkedIn about that person's history, about where they studied, about how long they've been at the company. Like there's literally just so many variables and characteristics that you can look at on their profile that you can make it personalized to that person. So it almost just shows like no effort, to be honest, if you're not personalizing it. And I think the other one, which Joanna mentioned, is when you ask for something straight away. Like in the first message, it's like, can you give me a referral? And it's like, no, I don't even know you. Like, relax. How about we have to first? How about I learn a little bit about you before, you start asking for something straight away. So I think, yeah, when people just ask for things straight away and when they just don't put enough effort into personalizing their message, that people just get ghosted and then they get frustrated that they get ghosted. Another one that I also see is people get their connection accepted, but the person doesn't respond straight away. And then people get really frustrated about that because they're like, oh, I sent them a message, they accepted, but they didn't respond. And I'm like, that's okay. People are busy. People have lives. Like, they might have accepted that, like, while on the train or like in between meetings. Like, you can send a follow-up message. If anything, even better now because you're not limited by the number of characters that you can send out. And if they accepted it in the first place, it's because they would have looked at your profile and there's something that they liked. So don't be afraid to follow up and just not take the first hurdle as I'm going to give up.
So a couple of things in there that I'd love to get your opinion on. So the personalization, what bits of personalization do you tend to give people advice on?
I mean, there's a ton.
Yeah.
But usually I would look at like basically their career. So maybe like, for example, were they recently promoted? Maybe how long have they been at the company? Did they recently join the company? So if they joined like in the last 6 months, you can mention that in your message, right? Like, hey, I've seen you've been working at X, and that you recently joined the company. Congrats, would love to, kind of connect with somebody in sales or something like that. If you went to the same university or to like a similar university is also something that you can do. So that's something that we very strongly suggest is like if you're looking to connect with people from the same department, like check out if there's people from your university because you can kind of connect with like a fellow alumni. Another one is kind of if they've completed like a course or certification, you can kind of call that out. So saying like, hey, I saw you completed this course. This is something that I'm thinking about doing. Would love to hear if you think that it was valuable or not, or if it helped you in your career. If somebody's active on LinkedIn, so if they're posting, if they're doing podcasts, if they're doing articles, I mean, definitely mention that, right? Like the fact that they're posting and the fact that you're taking the time to read through their content is massive. Like who's going to say no to that? Mutual connections is another one. So, oh, hey, I see you're also connected with Harry. Looks like you guys both worked at the same company. Like, that's my brother. Would be great to connect on and hear a little bit more about your time. Like, there's honestly so many characteristics, but I think like that's the first one. And even with careers, like sometimes if you look at somebody who maybe worked in a lot of countries, like I've used that one before where I've said, hey, I've seen you have a really international career. You've worked across like Paris, San Francisco, and England. That's so cool. So there's always something that you can say. You just have to show that you looked at their profile essentially for like 5 minutes.
It's just the observation that you made, and a lot of the time, like you've just mentioned there, a lot of those are like inflating of the ego just slightly. Like it's all about them. Like that does go a long way, especially for someone like me.
I always say that like I'm a dream for someone to reach out to because obviously I post on LinkedIn pretty much every day. Like I overshare consistently on there. Like there's so much that you can say to me. And I always find it's mental to me the amount of times that people don't like link anything on my profile. I'm like, God, like it's so easy. It's right there. Why have you not done it? So yeah, I think that's all like such good points, good takeaways for a lot of people to take there for sure.
We've spoken about this before, but I ran an experiment. I have in my about section, I think I've just changed it, but if you were to use the word frog, so it's right at the bottom of my about page. It's like, if you put frog in your messaging, I will automatically either take a meeting, reply to you, or give you some feedback. And that were the first 3 years I ran that. I think I had like purple, pineapple were like two different words that I used. I had it twice. Now AI has come into the mix. I get it way more, but it's still very infrequent in comparison to how many messages I get. It's probably like 10, 20% versus what I'd expect is even if you're using AI tools, like it automatically picks that up because it literally says on my about section. So if you type in like how to personalize to Harry, it automatically comes up. But it's a really interesting experiment that I've been running for like the last 4 years of just shows how few people actually just read your profile or even view your profile before messaging you. That's always a big no for me. Like if you're going to message me, just sit on my LinkedIn for a little bit so that I see that you have viewed my profile, just to show some form of intent. So yeah, it does always make me laugh. And then when I do get one where it mentions like the animal or something, the word that I've chosen, it's always quite good fun. I like seeing how people actually use it in their personalization.
Very creative. I like it.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I would love to know, like, what are the most common myths you hear with people when it comes to tech? E.g., I can think of like, oh yeah, like there's a certain type of person that works in engineering. No one else can work in engineering except like a stereotype. So I'd love to see like what you typically hear and like how you're able to debunk that and then give people the chance to grow into it?
I think the biggest myth we hear is that you need to code to work in tech. And that's like the whole purpose why we created TechTalk to start with, is that people think that like you need to have like some technical knowledge, or like you need to have some like specific hard skills. And I think now, specifically with AI, like hard skills are not becoming priority anymore. And we even see that with like companies saying that, like, again, like qualifications and like you having a degree is not necessarily the most important thing. Even now, like if you go on an interview and you're in between like two people that are on a similar level, a lot of the times you're going to go with the person that has better soft skills as opposed to hard skills, because hard skills is like so easy to learn and so easy to teach right now in this market. So I would say that's the biggest one. Rox, do you have another one?
In terms of the biggest, yeah, I think like also just thinking that you need to have already have worked in the industry. Like people think that people like that hiring managers aren't open to hiring somebody who hasn't already worked in the tech industry. I think people don't realize that like basic characteristics around like adaptability, resilience, willingness to learn is actually the biggest things that hiring managers really care about. But they tend to think like, oh, if I haven't already worked in fintech, then a hiring manager isn't going to want me to work in that company because I don't understand that, or because I don't necessarily know the fintech industry. So I think that's the biggest thing. Then of course there's also by role. So as you mentioned, like I think some people think like, oh, to be in sales, you have to be extroverted, and that an introvert could never, be successful in sales, when that isn't necessarily the case. Same thing for engineering. I think people think, oh, to be an engineer, then you have to be introverted, and there's no point in even applying to an engineering role if you like speaking to people, because then you're just going to be frustrated. I think people don't realize how fluid it is. And then also, people don't realize that you can start in one role in tech, but pivot, because again, it is a very fluid and adaptable industry. People think like, oh, if I start in sales, then I'm going to be stuck in sales for the rest of my career, when it's like, that's really, not the case. Like you can, if a company likes you and that you're doing well at the company, as long as you can show that you're able to hit target, and like you're a quick learner, you can pivot into something else. You just have to be very clear on what it is that you need to do. And yes, you might have to do some upskilling, and I'm not going to say it's going to happen straight away, but I think the biggest thing is just getting your foot in the door, and then you can kind of grow into it. So yeah, basically that the tech industry is not squiggly whatsoever, and they're actually quite open to it. That's something I actually spent a lot of my time doing at HubSpot. Like I love professionally stalking LinkedIn profiles. Then during my time at HubSpot, I would look at a lot of the leadership profiles, LinkedIn profiles, and I thought it was so cool how they'd just gone across like all different departments. Like I think I remember this Yamini of HubSpot. She'd worked as a consultant. She worked in sales. She did go-to-market strategy. I think she has maybe an engineering background as well. She did a bit of marketing. Like she did so many different types of roles, and like same thing for all of the different C-levels, all the different VPs. Like it's not that they started in marketing and only ever did marketing. Like they actually did so many types of things. And I think if anything, it's that breadth that allowed them to be VPs or C-levels at a company like HubSpot. So it can actually be seen as a strength in a company, tech companies, that you're so willing to like figure things out, and that basically no matter what kind of problem you're given, you'll be able to solve it. So I think that mindset is a bit different to some other industries, where it's a bit more, other industries are more of like a know-it-all industry, whereas tech is really a learn-it-all industry, which, I think people don't always maybe appreciate or realize.
Yeah, I think now, like, especially, I mean, I can't necessarily fully comment on every other department because I've not been in those departments or hired in those departments. But even now, I think the classic like way of BDRs getting into tech, because I think a lot of companies like hiring, there is still a lot of companies that are hiring like crazy, but I'd say for some of the bottom end companies, hiring has definitely slowed down, which means there's probably a few less roles available, but the demand or the amount of people that are applying has got greater as well. But I think to your point, or Joanna, what you were saying is like the hard skills versus the soft skills. I think there's also a level of like maturity now of like what you look for. Like traditionally, I think when me and Lauren started, it was just like, you're a grad, that's kind of what you go into. Whereas now I don't need to look at grads. because there are so many people transferring into tech. And actually, what I tend to find is people that have gone and done 4, 5, even like 10 years in another industry are absolutely switched on. Like, because they've got a level of maturity in their life where they're a little bit older. Maybe they've got a family, they've got kids, they've got maybe different motivators. They've had some of those like humbling experiences, but there's a level of grit now that comes with them applying for these roles. And actually, sometimes I look at it as like, would I rather have a 30-year-old that has done 10 years of work or a grad fresh out of uni? I mean, I think if you'd asked me probably like 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have said grad all day, hungry, moldable. Whereas now I think I'd probably lean towards the 30-year-old because I think they ramp quicker, they're smarter, they conduct themselves better. You're not having to teach someone to do a 9 to 5 anymore, which I find always the funniest things when you hire grads. Like, you have to train them how to do a job, not the job, but how to be in a company and do 9 to 5. Whereas you don't need to do that with someone that is transitioning in. So I do think that stigma of like, just because you haven't been in that sector doesn't mean you can't. I actually think your people that are transitioning now are becoming more desirable than they ever have been because of that.
Yeah, I think social media's played a big part in that, like we were saying earlier, because I didn't know what tech sales was before I was even in the job. You know, like a recruiter reached out to me and was like, do you want to be an SDR? And I was like, no idea what that is, but sure. Whereas now, so many candidates that I get, they're like, yeah, like I stumbled across like a video of somebody that works in tech, and oh yeah, like I saw this post about somebody who like made loads of money because they're in tech. And I was like, it's like, wow, like people are now choosing to go into tech, which I think wasn't necessarily the case 6, 7, 8 years ago. And my best reps have done exactly that. They've transitioned. They've come from other roles. I've got somebody who came from publishing. Like, she's incredible. I've got an ex-teacher. I've got an ex-person who used to work on boats. So these people, I think that goes into the point of the soft skills. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. It really, as a hiring manager, like I don't care what your career was. I care what you learned from that career and then why you now want to be doing this job today. And yeah, I think that I would be more likely to hire a 30-plus-year-old that's done 10 years of work than a fresh 21-year-old necessarily. So yeah, I think it's so interesting. I'd love to get into the conversation on how we got Tech Talk to where it is today. Selfishly, because obviously me and Harry, we're doing our little podcast here, and I would love to know how you managed your time, firstly, whilst you were working and building, and then when you decided to make the transition into turning this into proper founders, full-time job, this is what you do. I'm just so keen to always hear that sort of journey.
Yeah, I think at the beginning, we started TechTalk, like technically in 2023. But in 2023, we didn't really do it seriously. We were like just doing like a couple of posts, like here and there. We weren't consistent. And beginning of 2024 was really when we sat down and we were like, okay, now like we really want to do this. As I said, we started on social media. So we wanted to like start creating awareness to people. So we're like, okay, we're going to start posting a couple of videos. And like with anything, you need consistency. The moment we start being consistent, understanding how things worked, understanding how social media worked as well, we started getting a lot of traction. And this was when we were still working full-time at our previous companies. So for the whole year of 2024, we were doing that. Also for 2025 is when we quit. So for the whole year of 2024, we were doing it in parallel. We were growing like our social accounts. Everything was going great. Like we kind of started creating this other side of the business that we wanted to create as well, because we always wanted to build a community. That was our main goal, but we started with a couple of different services. So we were doing like a lot of individual coaching. We were doing a lot of CV, LinkedIn reviews. Like we started offering our services for like £5, £10, which is really funny. We met someone in an event like last month and she was like, yeah, I got your CV review for £10 like 2 years ago and I got a job at TikTok. I was like, we have some stories. Yeah, but so we were doing that. Like we were like just testing the ground, seeing what worked, what didn't work. Like we had so many different like type of products because we were doing a lot of A/B testing. So once we figured out like what worked and what we wanted to do, our social media started exploding as well. So in 6 months, I think from like January to like June, we grew like to 100,000 followers, like from zero, basically.
Mental.
Yeah.
So we started getting a lot of traction, a lot of people like reaching out to us to wanting help. And then that's when we decided to launch our community as well, but we didn't have the bandwidth to do it in 2024. So we decided to just keep doing the things that we were doing, get our company to a stable level before we fully committed, because we didn't want to quit our jobs being stressed about money, being stressed about like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm going to be able to pay my bills. We were like, we are in a good place in our careers now. Like we can bootstrap this. So for 2024, like we were investing in TechTalk. It already became profitable in 2024. So then we could invest more for 2025. And then when you got in a comfortable state, we decided like, okay, we can leave our full-time jobs now. It's fine for us to do it. We need to take the risk, because if we don't, we got to the maximum we would be able to do with a full-time job. Like we can't really grow it beyond this point. So we just had a choice. Like either we go full in and we want to grow it, or we just like stay as it is and stay happy with it. But we wanted to leave our jobs anyways, because we always wanted to build something of our own. We actually kind of started a company together before TechTalk as well. So we always like wanted to do something. And when we figure out what we wanted to do, because that was a challenge, then we decided to go full in. And that's when kind of ResLink came into the picture as well, which is another company that we have, which is like a SaaS product. We decided to do both of them. We took the pivot. I think Rox left in May 2025. I left in July 2025. And yeah, we've been doing TechTalk ever since.
Very cool. How did you, because I mean, I remember following you guys on Instagram, I think at 800 followers, and I think you're over 300,000 now. So like, that's just growing like crazy. When you started, who's creating the content and stuff like that? Because you came up with one thing I've always been extremely jealous of is it's very aesthetically pleasing. Like it's really good content. From day one, it wasn't like again, probably some of my videos is just like me walking around a park. Like it's not like that. They look a little bit more professional than that. Like how did you start with working out how you wanted to record stuff and create content like that?
Yeah, I would say that I'm very picky with the content. Like I'm very picky with aesthetics. Like I needed to look nice. Like we don't need expensive. We never had expensive equipment of like cameras or anything like that. Like it needs to be something that is like at least looks professional, because yeah, I see a lot of content, and I think walking on the park's completely fine. Like you see nowadays that these contents of people like being more natural, they're working really well. But it's just like when you have like really bad lighting and it's like something that is not easy to watch. Okay, it needs to be something at least pleasing for someone to watch it. But other than that, like from the beginning, like usually I'm responsible for content. So like just creating like what is the content plan, what is the script that we're gonna use. Like I do a lot of content research. So like now is a little bit less, but I used to spend a lot of my time like every day just going through content, because on social media, like we all know, is not about reinventing the wheel, it's about like repurposing content as well.
Yeah.
Like ideas. Something is already working on the other side. It's just figuring out like what is your angle to that same idea. And because we talk to so many people as well in our community every day, we always know like what people are struggling with, what are some things that we need to talk about, what are the things that we need to touch on, and then figuring out like what is our brand identity as part of that as well. But then in terms of like the content production, like we always split between me and Rox, because we both want to be like as equal as possible on the account, equally as well as recognizable like on the community and also like on partnerships and everything like that. But I would say like that's more or less the process. But then every social media is different too. So we started with Instagram. This year we're focusing a little bit more on TikTok, which is growing a bit slower because TikTok kind of functions a bit different than Instagram. Like the type of content you use on TikTok is different than the type of people consume on Instagram, and same thing with YouTube. So there's also like the diversity of channels, because if you kind of just go on one and you like, what happens if Instagram is out next month? You don't have a business anymore. So it's good as well to diversify, and we're even like focusing a lot on LinkedIn this year too. So I feel like diversification is like one of the most important things.
I think that's such a good point. We're doing similar. So we've got the YouTube channel, TikTok, LinkedIn. They're like and then obviously Spotify. There are three sort of like social channels. Neither of us are big on Instagram. So I've just never been someone that's created on Instagram. I've never really engaged with a lot of creators on Instagram. That to me feels like such like an alien platform. Whereas TikTok, damn, do I know that platform. I've spent way too much time on TikTok. You know, we were having a conversation with Sophie Allen, who was trying to build her Instagram, and she was saying, like, it's really difficult to get candidates. Like, it doesn't seem to be responding to my content. I was like, well, why don't you try putting the same content on TikTok? And she was like, okay. And she has, and she's already got a candidate from it. And I was like, okay, so clearly the content you were building is built better for TikTok than obviously what you're doing for Instagram. But I think it just comes back to that same piece of like the time element. Like, how like getting the time to diversify it, making it relevant to YouTube and then Instagram and then TikTok, etc. Because at the moment, like for us for YouTube, I mean, like, we just upload the same thing that we're uploading on other platforms, and we're just like, I'm not as fussed about YouTube, but with the same things, like you've got to put on everything to try and like reach all the different audiences, because obviously all the audiences are out there. Do you notice a different response on the different channels as well? Because obviously I can imagine that, like you said, like the audience is different as well as like diversifying the content.
That's a good question. I would say that it's more or less similar, but if we compare, for example, I think the biggest comparison is short form with long form, and then also like taking LinkedIn in the mix, because the formats are different. But if we just look at like reels, if you post them across all socials, like you're kind of going to get the same people if you're talking about the same thing. But usually if you do like short form, is those like quick bait to like get people to know you a little bit more, like get to follow you, understand a little bit more about your journey. Long form YouTube is usually very good for converting people, because they build more trust with you than they can in like 1 minute, 2 minute videos. So that's why a lot of people are going more to YouTube now as well. One, because of the creator economy there, but then two, because it's where you create that trust with like the consumer. And then you have LinkedIn, which you can kind of position it in a different way. So on our LinkedIn, like all our socials, is combined. So me and Rox, we are a brand, which is TechTalk, and we're like, we don't have our individual accounts. On LinkedIn, we have our individual accounts, and we can post about different things. And it's more about like building TechTalk and like all of our journeys, as opposed to just talking about job searching tips. And this kind of unlocks the other part of like B2B partnerships as well, because we have like the B2C front, we have the B2B front, and we kind of need to go towards both angles. But B2B, they're living more on LinkedIn. B2C, they are living a lot on LinkedIn, but they're consuming more content on Instagram, on TikTok. So it's just about figuring out like who is it that you're going after and where are the channels that they're spending the most time on. And then you can kind of focus your strategy there.
Super interesting. What's next for TechTalk?
A lot. In terms of the community, I mean, we're definitely continuing to scale the community, and we're looking to diversify actually also like the type of content that we do. So we're not just going to be focused on job seeking, but we're also going to be focused on career growth. So essentially, once you land the job in tech, especially because we've got a lot of career pivoters, how do you actually succeed? So, you know, how do you go about like your first 90 days? How do you go about building relationships with the right people? You know, how do you continue networking even though you're not actively looking for a job? So we're definitely going to be focusing more on the career growth side of things, which is really exciting. And then also on the B2B side, like that's a very big focus for us. So we're doing a lot of like employer branding. So we've got a couple of events with companies that are actively hiring that we're going to get to put members of our community in front of them. We're also looking to work with like more brands who have tools and like services and offerings that can help both job seekers and people that are very ambitious in their career. So yeah, on the B2C side, growing this new category, which is our career growth side, and then essentially continuing to grow the B2B so that we can kind of bridge the gap in between institutions and very hungry people that are building their careers in tech.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you both on here. I am just in awe of what you guys have built. And if people want to check you out, where can they find you? Instagram mainly?
Yeah. TechTalk UK, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere, more or less. LinkedIn as well.
Well, definitely, if you listen to this, make sure you go and follow these women. They are incredible people and very impressed. We will be following along in the back end, but thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys.
Perfect.
Anyway,
Anyway, yeah.
Next episode will be with you in a week. As you know, please give us a comment. There's time to come. We're getting comments now. It's so nice. So keep commenting, keep rating, keep giving us a like. It boosts us up in some way for some reason. That's what all the big podcasts say anyway. So that's what we're going to say.
And if you'd like to sponsor the podcast, please let us know. One day we will find a sponsor. But until we do, we're going to keep saying, if you want to sponsor it, please do. Well, thanks very much for listening.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming along both as well. And see you next time.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.